Thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at. The Department of Homeland Security complies with a judge's order to allow clergy access to the Broadview immigration facility.
What you choose to arm yourself with in this fight, love or hate, exposes which side you're fighting on.
Governor Pritzker calls for empathy and calls out President Trump in his annual budget address. We're live from Springfield. City Council honors Reverend Jesse Jackson and kicks multiple cans down the road.
So we have too many thinking leaders and not enough feeling leaders. And by that I mean that.
And we go to the WTTW News Archive and uncover some notable appearances by Reverend Jesse Jackson on Chicago Tonight. First off tonight, it was a legal and spiritual victory as local clergy members were able to go inside the Broadview immigration facility today. It comes after months of being denied entry. Our Joanna Hernandez joins us now live from outside that facility. Joanna.
And Brandis, the coalition is calling this moment a sacred time. Now singing and praying as two priests and a sister finally were able to walk into the Broadview facility. Now to give you some context, access inside this facility has been extremely limited. It's been an ongoing battle for anyone, including local officials and religious leaders, to be allowed inside since the start of Operation Midway Blitz. Now a federal district judge granted a preliminary injunction last week allowing clergy and faith leaders to have access to enter the Broadview facility today on Ash Wednesday to provide ashes and communion during the start of Lent. The judge ruled that the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice burdened the clergy's religious exercise and failed to show a compelling government argument for denying them access to minister to those detained there. So after waiting nearly a week, DHS gave the coalition clearance this morning to enter the facility. The case was brought by the Coalition for Spiritual and Public Leadership, a Chicago-based religious advocacy group made up of churches and universities. Clergy says ICE rejected and ignored their request throughout late 2025 to access the facility. In one instance, they say a federal representative told them there would be no more prayer inside or outside the facility. The Broadview facility has drawn national attention in recent months, especially during Operation Midway Blitz. Videos even show officers using pepper balls on Reverend David Black during a protest outside the facility. Now, the faith leaders who were able to go inside shared what it was like inside the facility. They said the staff was very cooperative with them. We know 3 staff members received ash, including 4 people who were recently detained and brought inside the facility.
They were just detained, so you saw the crying eyes, confusion, uncertainty, but also you could see that they are responsive, so they felt the hope at the moment that they could see that the church was there with them. Yes, but everything is new for them now. It's they don't know what's going to happen.
We sincerely hope and call upon ICE and the Department of Homeland Security to provide pastoral care and communion and on an ongoing basis, as ordered by Judge Gettleman last week.
And as you just heard, the clergy is hoping that they're allowed to go inside the facility on an ongoing basis. They say this is an opportunity for them to work together. Now, after them being able to go inside, we know they're heading, there's going to be a mass at St. Carmel Catholic Church in Melrose Park at 6 p.m. following a procession around the church. We know family members, organizations, and about 300 people are expected at the church. Reporting outside the Broadview facility, I'm Joanna Hernandez. I send it back to you.
Joanna, thank you. $56 billion. That is the top line of Governor J.B. Pritzker's 8th proposed budget, a figure he says reflects a prudent approach to the state's finances during a time of uncertainty, but spending that Republicans in Springfield say is going unchecked. During his speech to a joint session of the State House and Senate, Pritzker also outlined a number of policy priorities and took plenty of swings at President Donald Trump. Our Nick Blumberg was there for the speech and joins us now from the Capitol. Nick.
Well, Brandis, Pritzker had his sights trained straight on Trump in last year's address, warning of the risk of authoritarianism and discrimination. Now, while the president was less present during this year's speech, Pritzker still spent plenty of time outlining the ways in which he says the second Trump administration has hurt Illinoisans, with budget officials saying the state has taken an $8 billion hit due to federal funding uncertainty, with the potential for a $1.7 billion dent in the fiscal year starting July 1.
These are not handouts. These are dollars that real Illinoisans paid in federal taxes and that have been constitutionally approved by our elected Democratic and Republican representatives in Washington. Unlike the federal government, every year Illinois must balance its budget. When Donald Trump is taking resources away that are rightfully ours, none of us, Democrats or Republicans, should be okay with that.
Given that uncertainty, Nick, how is the governor planning on balancing the budget?
Yeah, it's certainly no small task. Not only uncertainty around federal funding, but also a looming $2.2 billion budget gap. Now, most of the increase in spending over the previous fiscal year, about 1.6%, is due to pensions, medical expenses, and increased funding for school districts. Pritzker says this budget doesn't ask too much of Illinoisans.
Prudence demanded that this year's budget proposal seeks a discretionary spending increase that is less than 0.5%. It levels off and in some cases reduces programs that are important to me, some of which were proposals of my own. But I believe that the imperative of responsible governance and overcoming the fiscal irresponsibility of past decades must come ahead of the interests of any one politician, of any one program, or any one party.
In addition to keeping costs down, this spending plan also calls for generating nearly $600 million in new revenue, an estimated $200 million of which would come from a new fee on social media platforms.
And Nick, how would that fee work?
Well, it'll depend on how many Illinois users a platform has. Now, for the large social media companies, those with 1 million or more users here in the state, they'll have to pay $165,000 each month, plus an additional 50 cents per user for each person over that 1 million mark. Now, that got some cautious support from some Republicans, although, of course, the devil will be in the details. We also heard a couple GOP lawmakers sound open to another idea that Governor Pritzker pitched, that is increased guardrails on social media for young people, things like stopping nighttime notifications and increasing parental controls.
Social media algorithms have been proven to create mental health issues in adolescents and foster polarization and misinformation in society as a whole. Those companies are profiting from online engagement of Illinois' consumers, and they currently contribute nothing to ameliorate the negative effects of their platforms.
And what did the Republican lawmakers have to say about the governor's speech?
As you might imagine, the reviews were not exactly stellar. Republicans say the cost of living issues that Pritzker highlighted, they can be blamed on Democrats. And they said it sounded like Pritzker has his eye more on the 2028 presidential race than he does on Illinois.
I'm not sure that I can call it a budget address. It seemed a little bit more like a campaign speech and increasing his national profile.
Make no mistake, affordability problems in Illinois have been largely self-inflicted by a Democratic governor and a Democratic-controlled legislature that has never met a tax hike they didn't like. Groceries cost more, energy costs more, property taxes keep rising, and too many families feel like they're falling further behind every single year.
Now, whether or not it was aimed at a national audience, Pritzker did end on a note that would be at home in a presidential stump speech, saying he loves this country, he's not going to stop loving it despite any challenges, and that love has been a beacon for him during a difficult year. Brandis.
Nick Blumberg in Springfield for us. Thank you, Nick. And you can read Nick's full story on our website. It is all at WTTW.com/news.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
As the country continues to mourn the death of civil rights titan Jesse Jackson, his children today remember him as both a leader and a father.
Our father took fatherhood very seriously. He took that charge. It was his charge to keep. And so today we celebrate his life, although his body is absent from us. His spirit suffuses and infuses us, and it charges us to continue with the work.
Our father is a man who dedicated his life to public service, to gain, protect, and defend civil rights and human rights, to make our nation better, to make the world more just, our people better neighbors with each other.
It's been obviously a challenge, but I think we all feel the magnitude of this loss, but also the magnitude of a life well lived. And it's such an honor to be standing up here with my siblings and just thank all of you deeply from the bottom of our hearts for the love and support you've given our family at this time, and we share our love with all of you.
The Jackson children stood on the steps outside the family's longtime home on the South Side, recalling his decades-long work in civil rights as well as a spiritual leader. They say memorial services will be open to all, starting with Reverend Jackson lying in repose at the Rainbow Push Coalition headquarters. Then funeral services will be next week sometime at a church venue large enough to accommodate, they say, as many people as possible. Jackson died yesterday morning at his home after a brief battle with a rare neurological disorder that affected his ability to move and speak. A statue of the first American saint, Francis Xavier Cabrini, will replace a statue of Christopher Columbus in Little Italy's Arago Park. The Chicago Park District says Cabrini, who served poor Italian immigrants in Chicago, received 38% of the 3,900 votes cast in what was a little advertised online contest. The move is part of an agreement between the Park District and the Joint Civic Committee of Italian Americans after the Columbus statue that you see here was removed from the park and given to the committee to display elsewhere. It was removed in 2020 after it and other Columbus statues became the site of protests. Artists interested in sculpting the statue can submit an application online starting March 1st. And in a lighter moment at City Council today, alderpeople recognized blues legend Buddy Guy for his contributions to the music. Guy said he thinks more people should know about the city's contributions to blues.
When I look at Nashville, Texas, New Orleans, with those great musicians, I don't see a picture of neither one that made Chicago what it is today. But I'd like to see statues or something to let the world know that Chicago is the world capital of the blues. Thank you.
Afterwards, several alderpeople lined up to catch a photo with the guitarist and vocalist. Guy is on a world tour this year, so blues fans, listen up. He's in Chicago in July. Up next, Heather Sharon with a rundown of what else happened at today's City Council meeting right after this. It was a somber gathering today at City Hall where the first order of business was to pay tribute to the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., who died Tuesday morning. Mayor Brandon Johnson remembered Jackson is not just a civil rights icon who worked alongside Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., but also as a friend and a fighter for Chicago. Here he is.
Together, Dr. King and Reverend Jackson made Chicago a battleground for fair housing, equity, and economic justice. They spread a message of empowerment, equality, and justice worldwide.
Our Heather Sharon joins us now from City Hall with more on today's council meeting. So Heather, after that moment of silence, the City Council did get down to work, and we usually rely on you to tell us what happened at City Council. But This time we need you to tell us what did not happen and why, starting with that effort to override the mayor's veto of a measure that would have banned the sale of hemp products, or the most intoxicating hemp products throughout the city. What happened there?
Well, the mayor said he would veto this measure last week, and I spoke with the measure's author, Alderman Marty Quinn, who said he simply did not have the votes to override the mayor's decision. But Alderman Anthony Beale tried anyway, and only 26 aldermen joined him. He needed 34. So for now, there are no restrictions on most intoxicating hemp products in Chicago, but this is an issue we're going to be hearing more about in the coming months.
Heather, the city council is also scheduled to vote on a measure that would have given Chicago's police misconduct agency the power to investigate whether or not CPD officers and leaders have violated city law by helping federal immigration agents. But that was blocked. Why?
It was. 4 conservative alderpeople used a parliamentary procedure to prevent a vote on the measure today, even though it has the support of Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling, and really sprung out of the aggressive immigration raids we saw sweep the city this fall, and concerns that Chicago police officers were violating the city ordinance that prevents them from helping federal agents carry out civil immigration law. Like the debate over hemp, this issue will be back at the city council, perhaps as sooner than next month, but certainly in the March meeting, as all eyes continue to watch for a return of those raids to Chicago.
So the city council also rejected a plan to crack down on scofflaws who park in bicycle lanes, bus lanes, and crosswalks. Why?
Well, this measure would have allowed anyone to snap a photo of those offending vehicles parked in bike lanes and bus lanes and send that to the city for a fine to be issued. Only 16 alderpeople voted for that measure amid concerns that it would turn all Chicagoans into parking meter agents and could lead to violence as people objected to sort of being caught in the act.
And briefly, Heather, before we let you go, another expensive day for police misconduct settlements.
In all, $29.2 million will go to 4 men who spent 71 years in prison after being convicted of crimes they did not commit. On the word of a disgraced Chicago police detective, in all, lawsuits naming him have cost the city $159 million to date, with 38 more lawsuits pending.
Okay, a hefty tab for the city. Heather Sharon at City Hall for us. Thank you. And you can read Heather's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news. The Reverend Jesse Jackson may have been born in South Carolina, but he lived most of his life as a Chicagoan. Reverend Jackson appeared here on WTTW and Chicago Tonight dozens of times. We thought we'd take a look back at some of his most memorable appearances here, spanning 5 decades. We start with his visit on WTTW marking Mayor Richard J. Daley's death in 1976, talking about how he and Dr. Martin Luther King interacted with Daley when they came to Chicago in the mid-60s.
Reverend Jackson, I was covering City Hall back in 1966 during Dr. Martin Luther King's efforts here on slums. And it seemed to us in the press room that he really met his match in Mayor Daley, because this was his first foray into the North, really. In the South, you met belligerents and police and dogs and everything else. But Dr. King came to Chicago, and after some unpleasantness, it ended up with a great big press conference in the mayor's office, and the mayor saying wonderful things about Dr. King and promising programs, and that's just about the last we ever heard of the effort. Would you agree?
Well, not quite, Michael. For example, it was said that it was impossible to amass a massive movement in an urban area. We did amass a massive movement. That in the South, that the racism was blatant. In the North, it was more subtle. You could never draw a reaction here. But here, as opposed to being a bull corner, it was whole areas of ethnic groups that would pour on the blacks as they tried to expand. And ultimately, that movement grew to national proportions. Now, we finally came to some kind of an agreement, And the mayor and a broad cross-section of citizens agreed to implement that housing program. They did not deliver. That was not so much a reflection upon Dr. King's inability to succeed in the movement as it did the unwillingness of many forces in '66 and yes, even in '76 to resist the expansion of black people in the city.
Reverend Jackson, over the last few years, it seems that your ideas have become a lot less radical and more establishment-orientated. Has Reverend Jackson's power base diminished over the last 5 years, or has it possibly increased?
Well, I would think that our support base has increased, but the issues have changed. For example, we were fighting 10 years ago for access to public accommodations, and in order to be able to use hotels, motels, public parks, and libraries, we were willing to sit in, to wait in, to go to jail, to do whatever we had to do. But now one does not have to use that tactic to use Holiday Inn. One simply needs to have money or a credit card. We were willing to go south and risk our lives and use those same techniques to get the right to vote. But now that we have the right to vote, 800,000 blacks in this city eligible to vote, only 425,000 are registered. And so the issues have fundamentally shifted.
One of our problems now, perhaps, is that we have too many thinking leaders and not enough feeling leaders. And by that I mean that thinkers devoid of feeling or compassion are very hard, and yet people who feel also think. There must be a greater sense of human feeling in our government judgments. We cannot, as leaders, just follow opinion polls. We must mold opinion.
Do you have feelings about this for the city of Chicago?
Well, you know, our city for the last 2 years has known a lot of racial polarization. There's been a lot of dumping on our city about this kind of racial cesspool. The fact is we've created a championship here, and it's not all white, it's not all black. So people have come together, and I think it's a challenge to political leaders. It's a challenge to those who want to be Super Bowl champions in their chosen field of endeavor. One has to be impressed with the way these guys love each other.
Well, I learned one thing about you today that I didn't know, and that is that maybe it's common knowledge, and I just missed it. I did not realize that you called her husband to tell her that he had been shot. Can you describe that for us?
Well, you know, Dr. King and I we were on the way to dinner, and in the middle of that conversation, he was shot. And my first reaction when I saw he was shot and it was mortally wounded was to then call her. I had the telephone number by their bed. And when I called her, it was a very difficult call to make. I said, I think he's been shot in the shoulder. Get it as quickly as you can. I was trying to cushion what I was saying. He had been hit in the neck. But she sensed the gravity of it. Many other things had built up to this moment for her. She said, well, I will come quickly. But before she could really get moving, the phone began to ring, national news, he was dead. And in that moment, she came unto herself with an amazing sense of power, assuming the responsibility to pick up where he had left off. She emerged from that situation, organized a very tasteful global funeral and life celebration, led a demonstration of 50,000 people in Memphis, Tennessee, garbage workers. That built the King Center as resources flowed in. And then the King holiday, I mean, she really never stopped marching. And really, she worked 38 years after his death, almost as long as he lived. But she was fundamentally a freedom fighter with an amazing sense of dignity and self-respect, a wife, a companion, as well as an activist.
What did you make of his remarks and the controversy over Senator Obama's remarks regarding his willingness, his quote, willingness to meet with leaders of rogue nations and his willingness to attack Pakistan, areas of Pakistan where al-Qaeda might be hiding?
You know, every time I was blessed to bring some Americans home from a foreign jail. I brought Goodman home from Syria.
Yeah,
I met with Assad. I brought Americans home from Cuba with Castro. I brought Americans home from Iraq with Saddam Hussein, meeting with him. Brought Americans home from Yugoslavia, meeting with Milosevic. I don't know how you break the cycle of the Cold War unless you're willing to, in fact, engage in aggressive diplomacy. And so I think that walls have not worked. Hot rhetoric in Cold War has not worked. And so someone must have the authority. Just as Nixon went to China, just as Reagan challenged the Berlin Wall, we need that kind of boldness, it seems to me, in foreign policy. We are strong enough to have strong diplomacy, backed up by military, not military backed up by hot rhetoric that ends up in a lot of people killed unnecessarily.
Last question. You said in the 1984 Democratic Convention speech, "As I develop and serve, be patient. God is not finished with me yet." What do you think's in store?
Well, I'm convinced more than ever, because during this period I've been able to grow and develop and meet new friends and to be in a position to make an even greater impact. And I want to do just that. It was clear to me then that that was a part of my growth process, and I'm alive. And where there's life, there's hope. Where there's hope, there's infinite possibility. And I intend to be a major factor in international economic justice, in peace, in human rights, and getting this generation to say no to drugs.
The Reverend Jesse Jackson on WTTW over the years, always willing to join us and talk about the issues of the day, his causes, and his work. He will be missed. And that's our show for this Wednesday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm and sponsor of programming that offers continuing education to fellow legal practitioners in Illinois.